And welcome back. In this video, going to continue working on the right wing. At the moment you see me, I'm talking to Van's technical assistants. I had a question on the most inboard rib, the number 1 rib. The instructions tell you to or final size one of the holes to a number 19. And the problem was the hole's already larger than a size 19 drill bit. And so I wasn't sure if I was supposed to create a new hole that wasn't shown in the instructions or what I needed to do. So I contacted him. And what it was is it's one of the tooling holes. In other words, one of the holes they use to align the piece when they stamp it. And it's sized for a number 10 bolt. And what is supposed to go in there is a grounding lug, which apparently is a size 8, a number 8. So it's just barely larger, and since it's just a grounding lug that's going to be bolted to it basically and attached, the technician was perfectly okay with leaving it as is, and he said I could drill a new hole if I'd like, but it wouldn't really be necessary since it's just a grounding attach point, and it would still have plenty of surface to hold on to when you attach the bolt. So everything was okay, just left it as is and moved along. So now I'm working on enlarging the holes, and this is actually creating a hole where the electrical wiring is going to go through. And so on the right wing, all of these holes are the same. There's 2 per rib, and you just got to look at the instruction. It shows you where the locations are. But all of them have one hole towards the lower front end of the rib that you enlarge to a 1/2 inch with your step bit. And then the other one, as you see me doing here, I'm taking a set of calipers and measuring from the existing hole and making another hole just above it. As per the instructions, the electrical wiring is supposed to go through the top end of the rib, and there is not a hole there, so you have to make one. So I just took my calipers, measured it out, scribed out the approximate line height from the bottom hole there, and then measured the distance from a reference point along the horizontal axis of the rib, and made the holes. And again, stepped them up to a size, a 1/2 inch size, to put the plastic sleeves through that the wiring will go through. And the plastic sleeve is just there to protect the wiring from any chafing on the ribs, obviously. So I go through all 14 ribs, and it's time consuming, so I edited out most of that process, but it's just a matter of just going through and, like I said, verify if you're working on the right or left wing, because they are different, and just make sure you're putting them in the right locations. So here you see me working on the flap bracket, finally attaching that to the rib, riveting in place. And again, this is where the flaps will attach to that hole you see at the bottom of that bracket. That's where they'll pivot, and the actuator will be connected to the flap and move it along that pivot point. And so this is a pretty sturdy connection point. There's a lot of rivets, and it's a thick piece. The flap bracket itself is pretty thick. It's 1/8 aluminum. And so you just go through, you want to make sure that you, as always, you want to look and make sure you're doing good, making good rivets, and that they're, you're not smearing the shop end, which is the side to use the bucking bar on. I believe. I always get it mixed up. Anyway, the side that you use the bucking bar on, you want to make sure that you don't smear it, you don't, make it go to one side. You want to make sure it's a good centered rivet. Especially for these are going to be a pretty high stress point on the aircraft when you're using your flaps. Now there's two ribs on the wings that have these attach points, the number 3 rib and the number 8 rib. And so you just want to make sure that, like I said in one of the previous videos, that I had made the assumption that all the ribs marked with an R were going to be the correct ribs to use for the right wing. Turns out that's not the case. So you really want to make sure you're paying attention to the schematic, the blow-up diagram that's at the front of the chapter, to verify which ribs you need to grab. Some are left, some are right, and you'll see that on the wing as the ribs are attached to the spar. Some are facing inboard and some are facing outboard. So just make sure you're paying attention to which one's which. Now this is the bracket that is attached to the number 1 rib on the inboard side of it. I believe this is the aileron bell crank actuator bracket. It's attached, like I said, to the inboard side of that most inboard rib, and it's just a matter of riveting these together. I believe there's three plates and then a bearing that's held in between that I believe the actuator sits inside. And so it's just a matter of doing your normal deburring, making sure all the holes are drilled to size, and then deburred. And then I've chosen to prime most of these types of parts. Again, I don't think there's really a necessity to do it, other than this is going to be a high wear point, so figure why not. Now, using a squeezer, if you get a chance, the squeezer is a great tool. It saves a lot of time, especially compared to using a bucking bar and a rivet gun, and it's a lot cleaner. Problem is that sometimes the rivets just are too big and you can't get a proper squeeze, so you have no choice like I'm doing here. I wasn't able to reach most of these, but you'll see me as I'm using that squeezer that I change out the heads a lot, the dies, and also I use a lot of spacers, so it can be a pain, but it does make things a lot faster. So as I'm finishing attaching this bracket to that number 1 rib, I'm going to go ahead and let this drop out here. Again, for those that continue to watch these videos, I appreciate it. Hit that like button for me, and if you haven't already, subscribe, and you'll see the next video as they come out. We'll see you next time.